I put them as Word document and PowerPoint, but also put PDF versions of them in there so we won't accidentally lose them. So I always have them backed up anyway. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Carolyn. People don't have to mute necessarily, or you can mute as you need to.
Yeah, I don't need people to mute if they want to. It's just a small group, and if you just signal somehow, I can stop talking. You can ask a question or make a comment or whatever it may be.
Right.
So I don't know if Doreen knows this. I know Denise and Kelly know this. I recently started teaching at Maranacook High School in February. I moved schools in the middle of the school year. So not only did I change schools, but I changed from elementary. I was elementary for the first 20 years of the time I was at Bonnie Eagle. I moved to the middle school for the last year and a half, thinking that was the change that I needed, and it just wasn't. I just completely needed to change districts. So the opportunity came up at Maranacook, and I took it, and I got hired, and I went. So this whole spring has been just really nutty in a lot of ways, because we moved in the middle of everything. And I found out last week I live on the same street as Jean Zimmerman. I saw her walking her dog the other day. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. So, but I haven't seen her since then. So I think she's been staying in her house and being safe and self-quarantine. So I have a slideshow to share with you about doing a vision board. And I have a Google document that has the information that I use to do the time capsule. So I will share both of those with you today. And both of those include exemplars or an example that I gave that I had done myself. So if you want to get a sense of what those look like, those are shared as well. So I'm going to share my screen. Make sure I do this correctly. All right. All right. Can everybody see my slideshow? Are we good?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just my email, Carolyn, so I have to make sure people aren't trying to get in. So.
Oh, okay. So my purpose for doing the vision board was to discover what my students' goals were and how they pictured their future, whether it was their high school future, whether it was their college future, their work future, their military future, their future if they wanted as a parent. So there were a lot of choices as far as how this vision board could go. So, which was nice. I learned a lot of different things about my students coming in mid-year. They'd already had a substitute teacher for about a month before I arrived. And so it's just a fun activity to kind of get them back on track. Because from what I understood, the substitute teacher didn't do a whole lot with them for the month between when the teacher left and when I arrived. So I just wanted to give them something fun to learn about them. So that's where that idea came from. I just went over some of the things about myself. So, but I also, before I became a phys ed teacher, I taught for about 5 years at the middle school level, teaching science, social studies, and math. So I do have a classroom background, even though I haven't been teaching health for very long. I've got that classroom experience. So that gives me a little different perspective as well. So some of the other goals that I talked about, not only did I want to get to know my students, but I wanted to get an idea of what they knew about the 3 categories of health: the social, mental, and physical areas, how well they were followed directions, and what things I might need to adjust for them going along, get a sense of what their work habits were. It was very different between my 2 classes. Kids were assigned to health classes based on what classes they were, other classes that they were in. So I ended up with a lot of the kids that were taking like college track classes in my first health class, and my second health class were classes that students are a little bit less focused. So it gave me a sense of what the work habits were for each class. And I also gave them a chance to self-reflect on their vision board, and so they were able to grade themselves. So we took my grading and their grading, and we put them together for that score on this activity. These are the district standards and the state standards that were utilized. So the kids knew what standard they were working toward. So if you can go back and look at those at any time if you'd like. So I think we're all familiar with those state standards pretty well. So before we started the vision boards, I did make sure we went over the DECIDE acronym and what SMART goals were to help them think about some of the things they might want to include on those. I put at the top of the background info, this is a traditional vision board that we used to do. Used to cut pictures out of magazines, words out of magazines, and put them all on a bulletin board. So I just thought I'd do a throwback for everybody. I did have one student that did do her vision board that way. I've done vision boards in some of the master's classes and some of my doctoral classes that I've taken. And we did the exact same thing. We cut things out, taped them on a board, taped them on a poster board. So I gave anybody the option that needed that, that tactile experience. They really wanted to use their hands. I have one student that did do that. So you can see some of the first steps we did. We brainstormed a lot of things. Like I said, I wanted it to be about their choice. So there were choices about what time span they wanted to cover. If they just wanted to do their goals from now until the end of high school, they could. If they wanted to, if they were planning on going to college, what they thought that might look like for them, what their goals were for after college, if they wanted, where they wanted to move, if they wanted to travel, did they want to have a family? So, I mean, there was a lot of things. Some kids did the whole gamut. They put a little bit about from sophomore year till the end of high school. They put a little bit about their college. They put a little bit about what they expected their family life to look like. Some of them were a little more focused in a time span. How to present. A lot of kids made slideshows. Some kids did a Google Doc. Like I said, someone did a traditional one. But since I've been doing these types of sessions with the DOE this spring, we can use Flipgrid. We can use, they could do a movie. There's all kinds of choices. So moving forward, I would give my kids a lot of other ways to present. And within the rubric itself, there was some options about what they could do to earn a 4 as opposed to a 3. Some of those choices, like for the written work that I grade them on, where they use the complete sentences, whether they're, the grammar, the spelling, some of those types of things. If they wanted to present to the class, that written option would move up to a 4. So some kids really wanted to present. Some kids had no interest in presenting at all, but I wanted to give the options. So now I know more options of what to do because of all people like you and people that have presented this far. So my timeline, I have 76-minute blocks every other day to see my students. So this took 3 full classes for the class that I had. The kids were a little bit more focused. We were able to get that done in those 3 classes. My class that was a little less focused, we went into a 4th class. So you can see how I presented. I did not present the rubric to them until class 2. And the reason why I did that was because I just wanted them to get excited about the project. I didn't want them to get overly concerned about, what do I have to do? What do I have to do to get an A? What do I have to do to get a B? I just wanted them to, this is for you. This is for your future. I really want you to dig in and make some decisions, make some choices. Well, I'm not sure. Well, put that on your vision board. So I really wanted them just to relax, look for things in the computer, look for images that they wanted to use, chat with one another about what other people were thinking, and just to relax and enjoy that first class. And I presented the rubric in right at the beginning of the 2nd class. And to keep them on track and keep them moving along, I did give them halfway through that 76-minute block of the second class, I had to come and check in and tell me what they had going on. I had some kids that had a really hard time self-starting, and to ask them some questions to get them started. I had a student that wanted to, he wants to open a medical marijuana dispensary, is what he wants to do. And I asked him, what are your reasons for that? And he said that his mother has some physical disabilities, that she really relies on that. And I think he thought he was going to get in trouble for doing that. And so I was really glad that I checked in with him, because he really couldn't get started because he thought he was going to get in trouble for making that choice. But I tried to get him to realize that, you know what, in the general Augusta area, there are a lot of medical marijuana dispensaries. On my way to work, I passed 3. So it's something that's happening in this area, and if you want to focus, that's what you want you don't want to go to college, you just want to take some business classes to learn how to open a business or whatever that may be. So I finally did get him started. He didn't complete the whole assignment, but at least he knew I was taking him seriously. So that was kind of an interesting experience that I went through with him. So like I said, the class 3 was just like time to continue working, and I did save the last 15 minutes of that class for any kids that wanted to present. I wanted to talk about their vision board. Some other kids got some ideas, like, oh, I like the way they did that. I wish I would have done mine that way. Those types of things. So now I have the exemplars that I can show students, and they can move forward with that. I did have them do a self-assessment, which I will share with you in just a second. So I do have a vision board for one of my young men. He'll show up. I liked his use of color. He did include everything. Talked about wanting to go to college, what he wanted to do for work or as a profession. I'll put buy a house, get married. But on this slide, he talked about being gay and how he wanted to adopt children. So I felt like he was making a connection with me, because I'd only known him about a week at this point, maybe a week and a half. And so he felt comfortable sharing. So I thought it was a great outlet for him to be able to share that information. Oops. Oh, I keep trying to close this out and it keeps giving me maybe I can put this down the bottom. Nope. Let me go back to, there we go.
You might have to just stop sharing and go back in. That sometimes fixes it.
Well, I know I have this little pencil. I don't know where that came from.
You're editing something.
There it is. Okay. I get rid of the pencil. We're good. Where does this little pencil come from?
Technology.
I'm trying to close this out. Okay.
Just go to the other vision board X next to it.
I can't. I've got a thing, an option thing above the top. There we go. Here we are. Okay. And this was another one from another student. She was really ultra focused on what her future plans. She just titled this her professional slideshow. So I thought she was ultra focused. She had different options that she thought where her college plans might go. She goes, well, I don't know what I want to do. I said, well, list them all. And she did. Some of the things she wanted to do when she was at college, other than taking classes. And just, so she really got focused in on her college instead of anything beyond that. So she was one of my kids that was always on top of things, always ahead of the curve, always getting things done. So here's the reflection that they did at the end. So I got to know, this is the way I got to know they had a grasp on the social, mental, and physical aspects of health. Something else they saw on someone else's vision board that they wish they'd put on theirs, or they really hadn't thought about. What was ultimately the most important thing to them, and then they were able to take the rubric and figure out what they felt they should be scored at.
Did you, Carolyn, did you feel that they were pretty honest with their scoring?
Yeah, they scored themselves harsher than I did. Yeah, they were pretty hard on themselves. I don't have the rubric here. I don't know where I put it.
It was up on another slide. I wanted you to open that up. It goes up like about the next one up, maybe. No?
One where you had the days broken down, day 1, day 2.
There we go.
Yeah.
I knew I had it. I knew I put
The
it in
team
here.
effort here.
Yeah, so.
Hey, can I see the rubric? But then I thought, well, maybe you're going to get to that later because those are
Yeah, no, I totally went by that. But here's the rubric I gave them. So I broke it down into their design, their creativity, effort, and written work.
You know, as I'm seeing this, and especially with the rubric, what a great collaborative, cross-disciplinary activity you could do with the art teacher.
Oh yeah, yeah. Actually, I shared a room with one of the art teachers this year. He was in the room obviously on days that I wasn't. So I had the room on gold days, he had the room on black days. But from what I understand, the health teachers are getting our own room this year. So
maybe.
well, there's a couple of teachers retiring, and they're not replacing them. I mean, so hopefully one of those rooms that are vacated will get. So just to wrap up before I take any questions, or if you have any questions, getting to know my students was very beneficial because as I was moving forward, even though I was choosing things to do for remote learning, it helped me choose my curriculum. It helped me find my lessons a little differently. Like I said, I got a really good understanding of their work habits, what I need to help them with. One of my classes was really self-motivated. They didn't need any help from me at all. They went ahead and did everything. Most of them got things done on time. The other class, I had to do. I would think I would had to have, if I had stayed with them, in school for the entire semester, I would have had to do a lot of check-ins with them, check in on their progress, see how they were doing. So it gave me a lot of information, not just on their goals. And it would have directed my curriculum as far as making sure I knew what to share, what things to definitely pull out. If you made this choice about drugs or alcohol, how would that affect the plans that you put in your vision board? Or does your choices on your vision board affect your choices when you're with your friends in a social situation? So I just thought it was a great way to start the year.
Carolyn, can I ask a question?
Yep.
Did you talk with them about how to use a vision board moving forward in their lives?
Yes, I talked about going back and looking at it, and things might change. In a couple of years, you might take. I had one of my students in the time capsule. One of my health students' time capsule said she was really grateful for some of the lessons that I gave because she's interested in a career in psychology. And one of the assignments I gave them was about mental health disorders. And she was able to reflect on that. She goes, I was really interested in those, and now I think I'm a little bit more interested in psychology. So you might go back and look at this vision board, and it might change completely by the time you get to be a senior, or it might change completely at the end of college, or we might have redone the vision boards at the end of the semester, and they might have noticed some changes. So there are a lot of things you could do with that, or I could share them with their advisors, and they could redo them as an advisee activity their senior year or something. There's a lot of options for that. So if we do start remotely or some hybrid situation come fall, this would be an excellent way to get to know students, especially as a freshman. If you had a freshman health class and you have freshmen coming in, this would be a good way to get to know them. I mean, you wouldn't have to do it necessarily this way. It could just be a vision board for their high school years or something like that. But it would be a good way to get to know your students if we're not physically face-to-face with them.
And I like the way you use the reflection questions to help get a little deeper into what you're after. And I could see tweaking those a little bit.
Yeah,
Whatever
it's
you need.
baby steps
Yeah.
with
I thought it
them
was
for
great.
sure. Yeah. Because so some of them were just very surface responses. We did this when we did the time capsule. Some of the kids really digged it. We're digging in a little bit deeper. And you could just tell, the experiences they had before, the teachers that they've had experiences of the teachers causing them to dig a little deeper. So.
Yeah, I think it would be a good start because you could always go back to say your decisions, influence the outcomes of what you choose, so I think that would be, if you had, the criteria, what you've done on this where kids could do that, I think it would be very good to always go back to the vision board and choices, like you said, with the drugs and alcohol or peer pressure, how all those are going to change, what you said you said you had as your vision. So
yeah, I thought, it would be a good reflection piece for sure.
I mean, I think this would work for phys ed too. I mean, as a remote learning lesson, because I think any teacher that's not doing this, you could do it for a general lifetime goal. So I think in either class, it would be great.
Well, and I think even if we're back face-to-face with students, we could do a vision board in phys ed, because I have a couple of bulletin boards in the gym, and they could do something about their physical fitness goals. They could do something about whatever units we might be working on, something they learned from an activity they really didn't know anything about or they hadn't done before, or I think because I think what we traditionally do in physical education, regardless of whether we're back with kids face-to-face or not, I think what we choose for units is going to be dramatically different, because we're still going to have to be socially distant. So, for example, we offer a team sports class. I mean, it's going to have to be tennis, disc golf. It's going to have to some kind of track unit that they score points as teams, but they don't physically get close to one another. And so I've been just thinking about other ideas of ways we can do those team sports and still keep our social distance when we go back to school. I mean, and we're only going to have probably 10 kids per class, or 10 to 12 kids per class. So that team concept is going to be totally different as well.
You already know that?
Well, I mean, we don't already know that for sure, but I mean, we're just trying to think of every possibility.
Does anybody have any questions or thoughts or comments on what you might have done with the vision board?
I've never done one,
Well,
I mean, I've done goal setting where the kids write goals. This looks way more fun and engaging than just what's your goal, and how do you write what's, specific, all the SMART goals that you talk about. But this looks more fun and more realistic where kids would have more time to do it than just doing that old SMART goal thing.
I went over SMART goals at the beginning, but yeah. I
know, but I mean, I usually just say, what's your fitness goal? Think it be, measurable and, all those things. But, I've never had them do a presentation where they looked at it farther in a vision part. So
yep.
I think that's good.
Doreen, you had a question?
I was going to say, we use do something very similar to this in our middle school health program when we do goal setting with the kids.
Yeah.
They create a vision board and we give them choices just like you have with either doing it paper if they wanted to, but they could do an electronic one as well. And the kids really love it. They do a great job. It really kind of ties in really well with the whole goal setting, decision making piece. And So we actually show, what's the movie with the gymnast, Gabby Douglas story.
Oh, yep.
At the middle level, we kind of tie the Gabby Douglas story into, why did she do the vision? Why did she and her family do the vision boards? We kind of have a tie-in with that as well.
Cool.
That's good to know. Thanks.
I'm not familiar with that video. What is that?
Gabby Douglas.
I know who that is, but I didn't know anything about a vision board.
Yeah, in the video or in the movie, that she and her family create this vision board together about where they're going to go and etc. And they reference it several times in the movie. So we use that as a connecting piece with our kids.
Yeah, it's a great way to cover decision making.
Yeah.
So you're getting to know your kids. It's a win-win. You're getting to know your kids, but you're also covering decision making and goal setting skills at the same time. So yeah, great.
Do you use that up front in your class, Doreen, like towards the beginning of your?
Yeah. Actually, our goal setting pieces towards the beginning of the unit. We kind of do it. Actually, we start off with our dimensions of wellness piece first, and then we kind of branch into the goal setting and decision making stuff.
My kids like to use pictures as well with their visual. They love to take pictures.
Yeah. I try to encourage them to take their own pictures so that they don't have to, if they don't use their own, they have to either use a free pictures from a free website, or they have to document it. And I'm trying to get them to take their own pictures so they don't have to go through all that extra work, but some of them are lazy.
But they're learning a little bit about copyright.
Yeah, exactly. Copyright. Can't take someone else's work and call it yours.
All right, great. Well, Carolyn, you ready to go to your time capsule project?
Yeah, I've moved my time capsule project. What I didn't do for my time capsule project is I hadn't put the district and state standards on that. And so I just went and added them in for this presentation to a Google Doc that I had that I presented the students with. This was a remote learning project. Obviously, it was done at the end. It was the last assignment that I gave them this spring. And I just wanted them to reflect on their time at home. And I was just really surprised by a lot of things from this. I got a lot of input from students about how they felt about the whole remote learning process, what they liked about it, what they didn't like about it. They needed to interview their parents as part of this, or someone that they lived with that had helped them out with all their remote learning assignments and experiences. And I was able to get some information from the adults that the kids live with about how they felt about remote learning. And so one of my projects this week is to go through and tease out that information and share it with some of our committees that are getting together to plan for next year. So without really surveying them, I got some really valuable information. So like I said, I realized that when I was looking through them, and I was like, wow, whoever's working on the academic part of the remote learning possibilities for next year would really benefit from this information. So a lot of nice things came out of it. I had a lot of students that I didn't hear from much during the remote learning time, if at all. And I sent them an email, if you don't get anything else done, if you could do this time capsule so you could reflect on this time, I would really appreciate it. And I got 2 or 3 kids to respond that I hadn't heard from. So that was nice. I mean, I don't know if I sounded desperate or or what, but a couple of kids stepped up to the plate and actually got something done. So I don't know if it was a type of project or the fact that I reached out to them or they needed something to do or they were bored. I don't know, but it was still nice to hear from them, and I made sure I emailed them back. I did email all of my students individually after I got these projects as well. So I did respond to everyone individually.
Well, I think this would have been good for me to have at the beginning because I can't even remember what happened March 17th. It was just like, okay, you're thrown out here. And today I had to look at my schedule, and then I said, I don't even know if today's Tuesday. And I had to look on my phone because I'm like, have all these things written down. but I'm like, what day is it? Because I know what I'm supposed to do each day, but I couldn't get to the point where what day is it? So this would have been a fun project from the very beginning for kids to have, like when they're, 30 years later in their life,
Yeah.
trying to come
And that's
back.
what I said, whether or not it's been a positive experience for them, this is, it's going to be a unique time, and it's going to be part of history that's going to be taught. So, I told them that I wanted them to really reflect on that. I did give them a little bit more time for the assignment, so it was a 2-week assignment. So some of the kids needed all my assignments. I broke them down into parts. Here's what you can get done, for these dates. And here's what you can get done for. Some kids went all gung-ho and completed the whole thing all in one setting. But I knew I had some kids that needed stuff broken down because they would get overwhelmed. So I broke it down into 2 parts for slides if they could, that I wanted them to include. Obviously a title page, an image of themselves in some way, so they remember what they look like or what the technology was that could do that. So it could do like a Bitmoji or an avatar or whatever it was. So for the first 2 weeks we were out of school, the kids were not responsible for any work. They had a kind of a 2-week spring break right in the middle of March, because I think our district wanted to focus on getting things set, and not like backpedaling because we put something in place that wasn't going to work. So they had a couple of weeks that they were just home. So I wanted them to reflect on that. And then I had them reflect on, well, how did that change after that 3rd week started, that, they were responsible for doing work. So we had 2 looking back reflections. And then look for quotes. I had them to reflect on what was something important that they learned, something they were thankful for, what they were excited to do when this all ends, how are they staying connected to people, what they were doing with their free time, any events that were celebrated. They had an interview section. I gave them a bunch of questions and they had to choose 4 to ask an adult in their home. And just a short letter to themselves at the end about what they would remember most about being at home. And I did one myself as an example for them, and I can show that to you, and I have some exemplars as well.
Again, Carolyn, this is, I think, a great lesson that could be cross-disciplinary.
Yeah, I have a section to talk about that when we're done. So, yeah. So making myself a Bitmoji was a little bit challenging. I had to ask. I have a 16-year-old stepdaughter. She helped me do that. So, but, I actually admitted to them how old I was. So during the whole pandemic, it was a big upheaval for us. When we look back, I learned about Zoom coming on these, and at first I didn't want to have the video running, but I got over that. Then we put our house on the market and we moved. I found quotes. I just did the whole thing that I wanted them to do. So they would have an example. Although I included way more images than they did. So it was a way for them to get to know me as well. My stepdaughter celebrated her 16th birthday while we were in quarantine. So that was interesting. And I interviewed my stepdaughter about her thoughts on remote learning and how it went for her. So that was mine. But some of my students, this is one of oh, you guys can see his name, I apologize. He put a picture of his dog, and he did his slides in a little bit different order. But he just did the basics, added some images here and there. What he wanted to do when he got out of quarantine.
Yeah.
And I had some really great ones. Like this young lady does like fabulous work all the time. So she included a picture of her family. You know, a lot of reflection. You know, she just does everything to the completely. She gets everything done. Just before we left school, she was trying to get recommendations for National Honor Society. That was her biggest worry. So, and then we have this one from another. Just, you know, she went. I get lots of writing, done very well. You know, lots of images. This is probably one of the best ones that I had.
Yeah.
So, and whenever I had like a Google meeting, she was one of the kids that showed up every single time. You know, so she's just a really good student.
Carolyn, can I ask a quick question?
Yep.
In sharing the slideshow that you and document, do you have permission to share these?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So, I mean, we were doing pass fail. So if they turned in anything, they passed. So I didn't really have a rubric set up for this when I first assigned it. But if it was something I did continue to do, I just want to do a different style of rubric. They could earn points, get to 100 points, and, you know, whatever number of points they got that represented the A, B, C, D, F point system that our district follows. So just, you know, but you could do a rubric any way you wanted to, but I just wanted to do a different one than I had done for the vision board. You know, if a student was looking just to get a C, and they could figure out what things they needed to put in there and to get the points number that they needed to get a C, or they need to get a B or whatever. And so they could decide if, you know, if they really didn't want to interview their parents, or they didn't want to interview an adult in their house because they're you know, mad at them, whatever. And that was the only thing they didn't do, they could still get a B because it would only take 15 points off. You know, so
I
yeah,
like the fact
a
that
little bit of choice. What?
I like the fact that that had more point value to it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Things that they had to write, they didn't just have to look for something, look for an image, or just take a photograph and put it in. You know, things are a little bit more, have a little bit more meat to them, are things that were worth a little bit more points. So other ways to utilize a time capsule format, an autobiography could be used in an English class. To capture another important event. Maybe they could capture a sports season, or you know, if they were in the school musical, they could recapture the process from when the school musical started to the end, or recapture a freshman year, sophomore year, senior year. I mean, there's all kinds of ways you could use this, and, you know, work with a content area to do that.